dinner, though. You know, and but we're about 90 seconds away here from launching. Paul Hynek, he is a man of many words, and you guys are going to enjoy this one. Jurassic Joey and Kat, how are you doing? Kat from Paranormal Heart Podcast there. She's got a good show. Make sure you check him on out. And, you know, Paul Hynek, let's be honest, do you have the blue shirt on tonight, the buttoned-up blue shirt?
You know, as far as you know, Dave, I do.
Oh, good. You know, I thought when we were on that panel, the Liar panel the other day when I, with Lorian, and I threw that at you, I thought you were going to react to that, and you didn't. And, you know, I was looking for the setup, and really the puck went in the corner instead of into the net.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of play that straight, right? You know, I'm very serious when it comes to UFOs, Dave. There's no joking about that.
I know. You're a man of many talents.
I am a man who has much about which to be modest.
But yet, in the same breath, you're a pretty good dude, man. You're a pretty good dude. I don't know how you do it. Here we go, my friend. Hold on. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. One of the good guys in ufology is here tonight, as Paul Hynek has worked in tech and entertainment and is currently a business consultant. He lives in that beautiful state of California. Paul is also a former adjunct professor at Pepperdine University and was a consultant on History's Project Blue Book television show based on the real project to investigate UFOs between 1952 and 1969. More importantly, though, he is the proud son of his late father, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer who worked with the United States Air Force investigating UFO cases from 1948 to the end of Blue Book in 1969. Paul's father began his investigation as a skeptic, but by the time the project ended, he was convinced UFOs posed a real mystery. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Paul Hynek, it's been a long time since we had you on this show, but I got to tell you, you were one of the funniest people in this industry, and I mean that wholeheartedly. If anybody's going to make us laugh tonight with dry humor, it's you.
Well, thanks, Dave. I guess being a funny person in ufology is got to be a compliment.
It has to be. This field is not fun right now, man. It is not fun. There's a lot of criticism, a lot of disgust, a lot of hate, a lot of backstabbing, you know, and that's just on a Sunday when we're supposed to be on the Sabbath.
Yeah, I mean, it's our job, Dave, to combat all this rampant alien hatery.
True. Very true. I got to ask you this. I mean, you're always going to be tied to your legendary father in this field. What was he like outside of UFOs? Because we only know him from the UFO side.
You mean apart from the cross-dressing? Because everyone asks me about that.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, for him, UFOs, you know, he's known a lot for UFOs, but that was really his side hustle. You know, that was like a part-time weekend job that the Air Force asked him to help with that I'm quite sure he had no idea he would be involved with for 20 years, or that his pesky fourth-born child would be talking about it on a radio show some 60 years later. He was an astronomer. He was a scientist who loved astronomy from when he was 7 years old, and he had scarlet fever in Chicago. He wanted to be an astronomer to understand the universe, and his goal was to sort of go to like the fringes, the frayed edges of known mainstream science and take a flashlight and just push the sort of scope of knowledge a little bit farther. So the way we knew him as a family was a warm guy with an over fondness for puns. And if you want, I can tell you the triple pun that he cracked the code for. A warm, fun guy who loved science and happened to get sidetracked into UFOs.
I'd love it. Give us the pun code.
Whoa, already? Just off the bat? Okay.
I'm rebellious that way. I am rebellious that way.
I hope everyone's sitting down because this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt bad. This is the triple pun. Okay? And here's the setup, and it's not awkward at all. So there's an astronomer, naturally, who's got sons. Okay, sounds good so far. And he says to his sons, oh, and by the way, this astronomer father has a cattle farm. This is not, like I said, an awkward setup at all. So he says to his sons, okay, my sons, I will give you my cattle farm for free with the one proviso that you call it solar focus. Okay? So his sons say, astronomer father of ours, thank you so much. But why the one proviso for you giving us your beef farm, your cattle farm, that we call it solar focus? To which the astronomer father replied, and are you ready? Because this is where it's going to start getting painful, Dave.
Okay.
The father says, you, my sons, inheriting my cattle farm from an astronomer father, must call it solar focus because that's where the, ready, here we go, sun's rays meet. The triple pun. The sun rays meet. Each word a pun. Long thought in the annals of humor to be impossible. Galileo, Newton spent years trying to crack the triple pun and gave up in shame and humiliation. My father dug to the bottom of Pun Valley and came back with this secret triple pun.
That is beautiful.
Now, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, the reason he needed a triple pun was because at our dinner table, my mom had a firm rule. You tell 3 puns and you're gone. So a lot of times I would tell 2 puns, then I'd whisper one to my brother and he'd tell them. And we'd sort of get away by skirting the rules like that. But sometimes, my father had to go back to work. So he came up with a triple pun as the way for him to be able to go back to work without getting in trouble.
The brilliancy of your father being an educated astronomer. Brilliant. I want to clap for that. For you growing up, UFOs were around you. Was there ever a time you didn't believe, Paul, in UFOs?
There is not a time. I don't know. First of all, I wouldn't say. I don't know if I do the word believe because I accept, like my father, I accept the phenomenon as having overwhelming evidence. But I don't know if I would say the word believe. That said, I can't remember a time in my life when UFOs weren't part of the fabric of my life. We had flying saucer ornaments on the Christmas tree. We had UFO witnesses coming over for dinner all the time. And we had all kinds of discussions about the latest developments in the UFO field.
Growing up in that environment, did you ever think it was weird?
Well, however you grow up is normal at the time, right? It's only with the benefit of hindsight that you understand that maybe your household was different. It felt, normal enough. It was a great household. My parents were loving and smart and supportive and very tolerant and open. We had people of all backgrounds at our house, and my mom was very active in desegregating the Chicago public schools. She worked with the juvenile court, very active in the community. And so at our house, we had all kinds of people, and it didn't matter what you looked like, where you went to school. As long as you had something interesting to say, you were welcome.
Did your mom and dad ever talk about how your dad broke it to your mom that he was going to be studying UFOs for the government? Because I can just imagine that conversation happening way back when, and your mother probably going, really? Like, they're asking you to do this? Like, have you gone off the deep end with this astronomy stuff?
Deep end is kind of where we live. Just the sort of open-minded attitude towards everything. So, the deep end is the comfortable part. And I think of it now like, we all have our comfort zones. If you stay in your comfort zone too long, it becomes boring. So that which is a little bit scary or intimidating to you today, if things work out, becomes your comfort zone tomorrow.
Okay, so your mom was always accepting of your dad working with this weird subject.
Let me take another stab at that. No, she wasn't. And imagine back in the 40s, her husband is an up-and-coming astronomer, hopefully on a tenure track. And all of a sudden, he's moonlighting for the Air Force studying UFOs. I can imagine my mom saying to him, Alan, that's all well and good, but how is that going to help you get tenure? And that's really what the goal is here, right, Alan? Tenure, right? I can't imagine a conversation being that much different than that. And I think my father probably would have been very receptive to that because he wanted tenure. That's what that's the brass ring. At the same time, this is the late 40s, and if the Air Force comes to you and says, we need your help, you're probably going to help them.
No, exactly. So do you recall being a kid and first learning about UFOs? As a kid, that had to be exciting. Like, I know when my son, who's 7, comes up to me and says, Daddy, is there really Bigfoot in the forest around here? And I'm like, yeah, son, there are. And we have this real intimate conversation about it, father-son. And as a father, you kind of take that for granted. But I also know deep down that I'm really affecting what my son is thinking about regarding this subject as well. Do you recall those conversations?
Oh, yeah. All the children in my family remember conversations either directly with our father and mother, as she came to accept the phenomena as well, or with people that came to the house to talk with our parents, like Father Gill and, Calvin Parker and all these other folks. So, and, I don't remember so much asking Dad, like, hey, Dad, do you believe in this? Because we always heard him talking on TV or radio and to other people. So we knew their attitudes. And basically it boiled down to sort of as you talked about in the beginning, that there's evidence that this is a real phenomena. Where they come from, are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional? That's a whole nother kettle of fish. But it's if you're honest, if you're interested enough to look at the phenomena and honest in your appraisal, it's hard not to come away with the conclusion that there's something going on. Then we can easily veer on what it is.
What is something regarding ufology that the public doesn't know about your father?
Doesn't know what my father about ufology. I don't know. It's pretty open, pretty much public record. Um,
Like, was he proud of what he did, for the government? Was he proud that he went from complete skeptic to believer? Was he proud of the work that he did?
hmm. uh, I think so. I think so. Um, he was frustrated a lot because the department he worked for at the Air Force wasn't really interested in an honest scientific inquiry into the phenomena. So it was very frustrating for him. But I think he felt that having access to this information and some ability to influence how it was collected and which cases were investigated was very important. He had a lot of arguments with like David McDonald and others who said, look, you're essentially a shill for the government. You're lending credibility because of your name to this effort that is not honest and doesn't really have integrity from a scientific point of view. So I think my father felt there were three main groups that he had to be mindful of. One was the military and the government, who were paying his bills. They're his boss. Then the other one is mainstream science, which is really his métier. And then there are UFO believers. And try to think of three different groups that are more different than those three. And imagine a Venn diagram with a teeny tiny overlap between those three groups. And that was my father's world. And I think he felt he probably had to keep each of them at least mildly displeased. And that would indicate that he's doing a fairly good balancing act.
Did he ever let you guys as children sit in when experiencers or government officials would come over, or was he very private with those conversations?
No. There were some things that were classified, but one of the things I learned from Lieutenant Colonel Robert Friend, who was the last surviving Air Force director of Project Blue Book, was because the name of the project had two words, it was largely not classified. So a lot of the information he trafficked in was not classified, and he was quite open with that. But almost by definition, I don't know about the information he didn't share with us.
Okay, but when he would have experiencers over and they're telling him about this saucer-like craft, I'm just paraphrasing here, saucer-like craft with these humanoid beings coming out of the craft, what had that been like back in the day as a child, hearing your dad listen to people talk about this sci-fi stuff that is only supposed to be in comic books, and television at that point?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's normal if that's what happens every day. So, we had all kinds of, let's say, colorful characters come to the house and spin, let's say, elaborate yarns. And so, yeah, that was Tuesday night.
Was there ever a story, Paul, that you heard or overheard that just kind of stuck with you over the years that was either so outlandish or too good to be true that it actually was true? There's your memory of this had to be just fantastic.
Yeah, there are so many vignettes, funny, informational, fascinating. Can I tell you about Prince Michael?
Sure. We got 5.5 minutes.
Okay, I'll give you a 5.5 minute rundown of Prince Michael. So Prince Michael is the guy that started calling the house, and I answered the phone a lot. And one day I answered the phone. He said, "Hi, this is Prince Michael from the galaxy Orion." And I said, "Bullshit." He goes, "You don't believe me?" I said, "No, you're probably from the Pleiades. I know you're not from Orion." And he started talking about like this star council and all these things like that, and saying, "Well, what do I have to do to make you believe me?" I said, "I don't know, dude. I just think you're crazy. I'm telling you straight up, I think you're nuts." Okay? Because you got this weird kind of crazy laugh. Like you make a claim like, "I'm from Orion." And that's the crazy person laugh. When they make a claim and do that kind of insecure laugh, he's like, "I'll show you." I said, go ahead, dude. What do you got? He said, "Would you believe me if I put $1 million in your bank account I said, you're darn right I would. And so he said, what's your bank account number? And I'm like 11 years old. I asked my mom, can I give him my bank account number? And she said, why not? I'm like, yes, Mom, thanks. She's like, you got $10 in there. Who cares? So I gave him my bank account number. And he said, okay, you'll have the money within a few days. So every morning, this is in the summer, I would ride my Huffy bicycle to the bank. And on the way there, I am dreaming about what I'm going to do with $1 million. And I had no idea what $1 million was. I'm going to buy yachts. I could buy countries. Who knows? And I'm just so happy. I get to the bank, and here I'm this scraggly, long-haired kid. Hi, do I have $1 million in my account? No. Paul, you got about $17.42. Okay. So I'd ride back home, dispirited. That happened like 3 or 4 days. And finally, Michael calls again. I said, what's wrong with you? Teasing a kid with $1 million like that. He says, oh, okay, I tell you what. How about this? You call the CIA, and they will tell you that they're afraid of me. And I said, well, I'd still better proof for the $1 million, but okay. So he gives me the number for the CIA. I call them. Woman answers the phone. Hello, Central Intelligence Agency. And I said, hi, first I just want to tell you I'm a big fan. You guys do wonderful work. And I'm not associated with what I'm going to tell you. It's somebody who called, and I, as a loyal American, want to tell you about it. It's like, okay, understand. What is it? And I told him, it's a guy named Prince Michael. He says he's from Orion. I think he's from the Pleiades. He says that you guys are afraid of him, and if I call, you guys will admit it. And this is a receptionist, person answers the phone. She says, well, Paul, let me tell you, we're not losing a lot of sleep over this. I'm like, the CIA is a sense of humor. How cool. So I said, all right, thank you, ma'am. I've done my duty. She says, there you go, Citizen Heineck. Very good. So Prince Michael calls the next day. He says, Paul, did you call the CIA? I said, darn right I did, Michael. He said, what'd they say? And I told him. He says, well, you didn't expect them to really admit it, did you? Like, oh, come on, you eel. Why would you tell me to call them if you knew they would say that? And it just went on like that. And finally, I got tired of the kind of joke value of this guy. But that's Prince Michael. And if he's listening, hey, Michael, I do believe you. The price is now $5 million in Bitcoin.
Geez, $5 million in Bitcoin. You better cash that in pretty quick in case this fall it goes down.
Yeah, get it into that Bitcoin safe harbor, baby. Whoa!
Oh, my goodness. Paul Hynek is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got about 90 seconds before we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. I mean, having Prince Michael and other characters phone your house, was your phone number listed or unlisted at that time?
Oh, it was listed. It was public.
So anybody could call.
Yeah, when my dad would be on the Dick Cavett show or the Tonight Show, we'd get this burst of calls.
That is, I can just not imagine that.
Yeah, and there was no answering machine back then. If you missed a call, you missed a call. But yeah, the phone would ring all hours of the night. People calling from around the world.
And what was the average story on that? They just wanted to tell your dad about the aliens or the UFO that they saw?
Yeah, I know we got to wrap soon, but by and large, it was people who honestly felt they had a traumatic experience. I make light of Michael, but most of the people who called, whether they did have an experience or not, you could tell they felt they did. And that's what my father would say, that he didn't know if they really did, but they thought they did. So he was very compassionate and very patient with them, because often they would be really traumatized.
Wow. That's just amazing. Just amazing. The fact that your father would give these people the time, I mean, in today's society, that just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't. It's very rare that it would. But the fact that back then he would give everybody the time of day to tell them their UFO or extraterrestrial story, I think that paints just an incredible picture of the man that I didn't expect. Paul, I'm going to get you to hold on right there as we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Paul Hynek, the Hynek Legacy, tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to talk some UFOs next. Disclosure, lots of goodies with one of the good guys in the field of ufology, Mr. Paul Hynek. We'll be back right after this on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear. You having fun yet, Mr. Paul?
Every time with you, Dave, is a new treat.
You know, if I didn't know you were being sarcastic there,
What?
I would actually think you're having a good time.
I'm having a good time.
I know. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing, man. So what else is new? You getting warm down there? You got the golf clubs all ready to go?
I'm not a golfer.
I thought you... No? Good. Neither am I.
No.
Neither am I. One of the greatest days of my life was when I gave up golf.
I grew up next to a golf course, and I've never once golfed.
Lucky you. Lucky you. I realized that golf wasn't as fun when I had to pay for it, because when I was in radio, I could just call up a golf course and say, hey, we're coming down, and I'd get a free round of golf. But once I actually had to pay for it, it really sucked. Dave Altman, by the way, little Davey Altman is in our chat room. He says, tell Paul I say hello.
Well, hello, Mr. Altman.
He's one of the good guys, too.
Yeah, he is.
But only on Wednesdays, apparently. It's the only day he's allowed to smile during the week. I literally called him up the other day just because I hadn't heard his voice in a while. You know, it's because sometimes you get people on your mind, and I'm still that old school guy. I like to make a phone call. I call him up. What do you want? Oh, well, I just wanted to say hello. I'm busy here watching my show, man. Well, go enjoy your show, and thanks for joining us. And, you know, made me feel like I was about that big. That big. That's the power of Dave Altman. Love him, though. Love him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a good time at Lorien's conference before the world fell apart.
That was weird. It was like 8 days. 8 days later, they shut down the border.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, was it that quick after that? Wow. You barely got in there.
Oh, dude. Like, I remember sitting at the airport. It's like, my flight is supposed to leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My flight doesn't leave until 8 that night. By time, it's actually kind of cool. So I get home, or I fly into Vancouver. My father picks me up from Vancouver Airport, and we drive an hour to east to his house, and then I have another 4.5-hour drive home. And so here I am, middle of the night, get to my, land at midnight, get to my parents at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:15 in the morning, hit the road, go fill up, do I grab some fast food? Oh yeah, I'm chubby, I need to. So go grab some fast food, hit the highway, get all the way through the mountains, dodging deer, and I get to this little town right in the middle of the Fraser Canyon called Lytton. And I get stopped on the highway because there's like 20 of the biggest elk that I've ever seen. And I've never seen elk before. So these things look massive, right? So I finally get through the elk maze, took about 10 minutes there. Drive, taking my time, enjoying myself, got the music cranked. Start to climb the hill up to my place. I got about an hour to go in my drive. Absolute blizzard. So instead of traveling at like 75 miles an hour up the highway home, I'm crawling home at 30 miles an hour. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now.
Elk and blizzard, were there like frogs and firstborns flying out of the sky at that point?
Pretty much. I'm telling you, I didn't get home. So I left San Francisco at 4 or left for the conference at 4 o'clock. I didn't get home until 6:45 in the morning.
Wow.
6-4. That was a long day.
Wow.
Long day.
That's commitment, my friend.
Have to do it. Had to do it. But what do you do? We got about 15 seconds here. And a big thank you to Sinister Shorts, Wagon Breath, and Ninja for the super chats. It's a great way to support the show. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. If you're brand new, hit that subscribe button. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking with Paul Hynek. The Heineck legacy is what we are talking about. And Paul, thank you so much for joining us on this night. It's just great to have you here.
Anything for you, Dave Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. I got to ask you this. I mean, there's people in ufology, and then there's people in ufology. There's the ones that we see interacting on social media. There's people who we see on, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, doing stupid things like I do, talking on the radio about these subjects, and so much more about this. Then there is this, in my opinion, this upper echelon where people such as you and the business types and the people, the scientists, really seem to gather in a quiet sense, to talk about the realities of this subject, away from the woo, away from the public where, they could go nuts on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Do you see that divide in ufology?
I see a very big tent that I'm actually trying to make even bigger, because I think the central question behind ufology, are we alone in the universe, is big enough to interest everybody. And I think, unfortunately, it gets kind of pigeonholed a little bit too much into nuts and bolts extraterrestrial visitation to Earth. And I think, as you know, the phenomena is much more multifaceted than that. So I look at the world of ufology as almost everybody who has an interest in life elsewhere. And then you can sort of boil it down a little bit more to the idea of visitations, be they extraterrestrial or interdimensional, let's say, as they say in Maine, from away, that are here. And, I've grown up and been around people my whole life who have an opinion about UFOs, yay or nay, or somewhere in between. And so I'm just, if I start talking with somebody about UFOs, my immediate thing is to sort of gauge where on a spectrum of belief or acceptance they are, and interest and perhaps personal experience. And I sort of calibrate how I relate to them based on that. Okay. So what are the people who are following this subject daily on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram missing that the people that you were talking to are discussing on a daily basis? Well, I can't say what the people on Facebook are missing, because I have the most anemic social media footprint, perhaps of all time. So I don't know. It's interesting. Sometimes if I go to a UFO conference, like we used to do before COVID, people might expect me to be more, to believe more than I do. Like, for example, I'm not sure that the government has a lot of secrets. I don't know for sure. I'm not an experiencer. I've never seen a UFO. apart from an asterisk, which I can delve into more if you want,
Sure.
I haven't had what I would, classify as a classic UFO encounter. So, and even if I did, I wouldn't want to talk about that part so much, because I think, like my father, I think my siblings and I feel that if we're going to be involved in the field, it's more helpful to be sort of a let the chips fall where they may scientific observer, trying to help move the needle of the science in the field, as opposed to personal, experiences. So, yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question or not.
Well, I think it goes into a good area, though, because there is a separation between ufology and ufology. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, right. I don't really know how to answer that.
Well, can I rephrase?
Yeah.
Okay. If I rephrase this, you're not dealing with the Dave Scotts of the world who are the experiencer. You're not dealing with someone who sees, little bright dots of light in the sky shaped of a triangle. You personally are dealing with the lack of a better term, the Hollywood types, the scientific types, the executive types, trying to get this subject into reality on maybe a business level, or professional level, or even a governmental level. That's what I'm talking about. Even though you're part of the community, your message and your drive is a little bit more different. That's the way I see it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I've had, I think, pretty much every kind of interaction in ufology that you can imagine, whether it's government officials, celebrities, experiencers, hardcore debunkers, everybody in between, since my earliest memories.
No, I understand that, but there are so many people, and trust me, I've seen some email lists, probably that I shouldn't have, but I keep it nice and quiet, where your name is involved and other people's names are involved, and like 90% of the people talking about this, I don't even know who the heck they are. So I just kind of wipe the slate clean, because I'm just a good old Canadian kid who likes the woo every now and again. But are there other subjects that are happening and conversations that are happening that go well above and beyond, somebody who is having, relations with a gray alien once a month, where that person gets taken by the same alien, or is part of the Pleiadian galaxy and, sees cat people? That's the part I'm trying to get at. You're part of...
No, there are no other conversations, Dave. No, nope, none at all. Nope. I had the pleasure, I don't know if you know Craig Campobasso.
Yes, good man.
He just wrote a book on the Encyclopedia of Alien Species. I think that's the title. I have a blurb on the back cover of the book, and he's got a great, penchant for wordplay, and he talks about the renegade Pleiadians and their dark telepathic chatter. So when you mention the Pleiadians, I think about Craig and him doing yeoman's work in alerting us to the dark telepathic chatter of our renegade Pleiadian brethren.
So are you a Pleiadian? Is that what you're saying? Because you're kind of a renegade?
You know that if I was a Pleiadian, I wouldn't be able to tell you. And actually, I'm from Orion. I think you know that. I'm royalty from Orion.
That's right, because you do wear a crown. You do wear a crown. No, I do get that. I appreciate that. But is there a different side of ufology that mainstream, people following this subject are not looking closely enough at?
Well, okay, let me answer that from the point of view of, very good friends of mine, Paola Harris, for one, Jacques Vallée, and others who have spent a long time in the field and do legitimate field research, and sometimes following a case for years. And they are looking at the field. They both and others like them have this sort of breadth of experience, both over the years and over the various continents, and are able to pattern match with other cases, but also have the investigative chops to sort of, get past the noise and get to the signal in a case and establish the veracity of the witnesses, and to really understand, what was happening in this location around that time. How does it fit? And the various specifics of this case, how do they sort of match up with other cases where the witnesses would have really no way of knowing what somebody else had reported 40 years earlier in France, for example. So those are the things I'm really interested in, and also in perhaps creating a new type of evidence system. Now we take the random evidence that we collect from cases, whether it's a physical artifact or radioactive traces in the dirt, etc., or a film or a radar sighting, and we take those to the scientific community, and we're largely met with yawns, like, okay, you got some anomalous thing there, but I've got to go work on my grant. So I'm actually interested in going to well-known scientists and saying, hey, look, let's turn this around. What kind of information would be compelling to you? Like, for example, if someone says they have repeated contacts with an alien, is there any kind of question that they could ask besides, the alien telling them that their Aunt Millie has the gout, or that we humans need to love each other? Could they ask them a difficult mathematical question or some other question that presumably this person wouldn't know? And if they came back with the answer to this question, you'd find that interesting. And if so, we could try that. And then if we did that a little bit, we could then, implement some control procedures. So that the person can't look up the answer on Google, for example. Is there any type of situation like that where we curate to what you want as opposed to just present what we have, where we can apply the scientific method and see if we can't tease out from these encounters something that science would find, at least at the very, just interesting enough to lean into it a bit more, and perhaps then find some resources to actually start to study it in a really scientific method type fashion.
So the majority of people are not looking at it that way. Experiencers have more of an emotional buildup in everything because of what they have had, whether it's abduction, whether it's contact, or whether it's just, close encounters with lights in the sky. There's the entire scientific community that wants to know about the propulsion, wants to know how these craft can fly at Mach speed plus and not break the sound barrier, or make 90-degree turns that would absolutely shred a human body, yet these craft are having the ability to do that. I mean, there's two very large and distant groups there, and yet many, and I've talked to Lou Elizondo about this, I've talked to Sean Cahill about this, and I know you have discussed this as well, that somehow we got to bring this together. We have to bring this together because both sides are not wrong, but both sides aren't right either.
Yeah. I understand your point about most experiencers may not be interested in, following up with a scientific inquiry. I think there are a fair amount of UFO experiencers, and I would add to the mix DMT imbibers that would feel validated to some degree if they're able to bring back some information that lends credence to the legitimacy of their experience, such that scientists would say, yeah, I find that interesting now. I mean, I'm of that camp, and that's why I've started pursuing some of these experiences with just that in mind.
That's a very politically correct answer that you're not giving us much, man. And here I thought I teased you enough in order to open you up a little bit more.
It may be because I don't have that much more to give, Dave. You know me. Give to President Scott. I'm an open book.
It's Prime Minister.
Sorry, that's right. That's right.
We're all hurt up here because our prince just passed away.
Yeah, condolences.
Yeah. He wasn't on our money. Most Canadians don't even know what he looks like.
I'm not going to touch that.
Yeah. Exactly. But let me ask you this then. Continuing on the UFO talk, we hear a lot right now regarding the government studies, and everything is revolving around the military, especially the United States Navy, and what they know. Lately, we've heard about the USS Kidd and others. There was a recent video released by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp of what looks to be a triangle flying by, which is really weird because if you actually look at the video slowly, near the end of it, it looks like there's a couple more triangles actually sitting there in that video, which is a little suspicious and suspect to me. Why do you think we're going at this from a straight military view? You're somebody who has been involved with MUFON. You've been involved with other hard and legendary researchers in the past that have nothing to do with the military. Yet today's ufology is all about military. It's all about the Navy. It's all about what are these AKA drones or whatever.
Well, I think one of the things that's very different now is that there are, let me preface this by saying that people have a tendency to think of the government as one big monolithic block that's coherent and cohesive. And for those who know the government, it's really not the case at all. There are warring fiefdoms and factions that actively fight and cross purposes with each other. So when we think about, disclosure, we could talk about that quite a lot. But one of the interesting elements is that there could be parts of the government that want to disclose things and other parts that do not. I think we saw some of that interplay with my father in Project Blue Book and the Men in Black who were, working against Project Blue Book. So I think the military things of recent years have really captured our interest because this seems to be maybe a lowercase d disclosure, but it's a sort of a process of disclosure where the government and the Navy in particular, thanks in large part to Chris Mellon, is saying, hey, we've seen hundreds of these things. We don't feel particularly comfortable calling them UFOs, so let's call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. We feel more comfortable with that nomenclature. But, yeah, we've seen hundreds of these things. We don't know what they are. We're afraid for our aviators, and we could use a little help in reporting them and understanding them. I mean, that is an amazing public stance from a branch of the United States military. And then, of course, where is this published? In the newspaper of record, the New York Times, which historically had, let's say, poo-pooed UFOs. So it really was a watershed event when these videos were released. And the Navy says, yeah, those are legit, and we don't know what they are. So, and you've got hundreds of witnesses, Dave Altman, who's listening, and, he and I are good friends with Kevin Day, who was the radar operator on the USS Princeton, which was in the same carrier group as the USS Nimitz. So he saw these things again, multiple times in the air, in the water, on radar. There were people with high-powered binoculars that made visual sightings. They saw them on the gun camera footage from the fighter pilots. So that's about as good a case as you get. So when you have the military who perhaps maybe stands alone in the U.S. government as having credibility, says, it's their job to protect us, and they're openly admitting, hey, there's something happening, and we don't know how to protect you. I mean, that just is amazing, and that never happened in my father's day.
You said something real interesting there as we got just a couple minutes to go before we go to break here at the top of the hour. And that is that your father was getting, kind of railroaded a little bit by the men in black. And it's funny because I asked Luis Elizondo about that, not about that situation, but about the men in black and other people involved. And they literally said there is no such thing as the men in black. That's just folklore and legend. Yet you're saying it's real. Is it real or is it not?
I don't mean to be the final arbiter of fact here, but I do believe they were real. I don't think they rise to the level that, as in the movie franchise, but my father did encounter, he saw them he saw people in, dark clothes and actually it was a white Ford sedan. And he went and investigated cases where people said other people had been there from the government and they told them not to say anything. I don't think they called them men in black at the time. I don't think that phrase had been coined, but my father did encounter some entities that were telling his witnesses to not say anything. So, to me, the most likely source of these, and to what many other people think, is that they were from the 4602nd Air Intelligence Service Squadron. In 1953, you had the Robertson Panel, which was a sort of a sham precursor to the 1969 Condon Committee. It was put on by the CIA, and it was an attempt to sort of whitewash the phenomenon and say, hey, there's nothing to see here, folks. And when that happened, there was sort of a bifurcation, and many people believe that the real juicy UFO reports no longer went to Project Blue Book, but they went to the Air Intelligence Service Squadron, which had as its mandate the responsibility to respond to any crash site, not necessarily extraterrestrial, any crash site of an aircraft in the continental United States. They had to be ready to mobilize and arrive there on the scene in 6 hours. And they had Russian speakers on their team. So their overall purview was not only to collect, materials, physical materials from a crash, but I think also to deal with the information fallout and to contain that. And one of the things, I recently went to New Mexico with Jacques Vallée and Paola Harris. And one of the things I learned is that in the 1940s, there were a lot of cases in New Mexico, and Roswell is perhaps the best known. And at that time, those happened in New Mexico close to the White Sands nuclear missile testing range, which is where Trinity was tested. And so if there were UFO sightings there, it would be the responsibility of the Atomic Energy Commission had the authority to investigate them because they were posing a threat to the national security as it relates to nuclear weapons. So the Atomic Energy Commission would have that information and would have then passed it on to the successor entity, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So they would have this information, and that information is a different classification system than secret, top secret, et cetera, that the president would have. It's a letter system like PQR, and the president would have no access to that. So that's an example of the government, for very good reason, having different silos and different entities that may not even know each other's existence. So to me, the idea that even as far back as the 40s and the 50s, you'd have different entities from the United States government interested in UFOs, but with different, outlooks on the subject and perhaps opposite goals in investigating these cases is not surprising to me at all. And I think when we hear Men in Black, we think very melodramatic, and some people think they're aliens. I think it was just another branch of the U.S. government that had a very bona fide interest in UFOs hovering around.
Paul, I'm going to get you to cut off right there because I gotta take a break here. The legendary Paul Hynek, the Heineck legacy, continues in hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio right after this. Stay tuned. I am just going to run my dogs outside. We got a few minutes here, okay?
Okay, cool.
Okay. Be right back.
Where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
All right, I am back. Thanks, Paul. Sorry about that.
So I just got a text from my brother saying, my brother Joel saying, I was an eyewitness to Dad and Bill Powers and colleagues complain about the Men in Black. You can quote me. The Men in Black are real. Okay.
Cool.
So there you go. Unimpeachable source.
That's awesome. That is awesome. We got about 1 minute or a minute and a half here before we're going to get going again. I really appreciate you doing this.
It's my pleasure, Dave.
Do you want to continue with the Men in Black talk after this, or do you want to move on?
You're the boss.
Well, I'm just asking. Do you have more to add to that?
I don't know if I have that much more.
Okay. We'll move on then. We will move on. I want to say a big thank you to Ibarata, Cherry Pepsi Mike, Cat, Sinister Shorts, Ninja, and Wagon Breath for the amazing super chats tonight. Thank you. It's a great way to support what we do on this show. And if you're brand new here, we are a live radio show, which is why we take commercial breaks. We're not a podcast, so I always like to remind people of that, especially if you're new. Do us a favor, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up or thumbs down and that subscribe button if you can. We would appreciate the support. You can ring the bell, as we are here every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. And soon we're going to have a good new website up and running, and it's going to look much better than what we have currently. Here we go. Paul Hynek, hour number 2, coming up now.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Tango Receptor. Tango Receptor is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with the Heineck legacy. Paul Hynek is here, talking UFOs all night long. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Dave. And I don't have a lot more to say about the Men in Black, because people think they either didn't exist or they're these huge mythical figures. But my brother Joel, who was a consultant on Project Blue Book with me as well, and also active in the UFO field, He was around more for the Men in Black than I was. I was more sort of the Close Encounters era. And, he had some fascinating experiences with my father, where my father would ask him to record conversations and things like that. And he went with my father to investigate cases. And he remembers hearing my dad complain about the Men in Black. And I don't know if he used those exact words again or not. But so for our family, they were real. They weren't like the boogeyman, but they were a very real phenomenon.
Weird. Maybe, do you think that program is shut down today, considering with the age of the internet where everything is a lot more accessible because people really aren't paying attention with what they put on social media?
I don't know. I mean, if you accept that as of 1953, there were, say, at least 3 entities interested in the UFO phenomena that we know of: Project Blue Book, the Air Intelligence Service Squadron, and the Atomic Energy Commission. Right? So you have to think there were more. Well, the CIA, for example. So that's at least 4 that we know as a matter of public, and FBI. 5 as a matter of public record that were interested in the UFOs. Now, you think about the Air Force, other entities, and the Army, and obviously the Navy. So because this phenomena has not gone away, and there's so many more entities and organizations and departments in the United States government, you'd have to think there are more folks looking at this, especially now that more and more solid evidence is happening. And I just got another text from my brother Joel saying, in fact, they did at the time call them the Men in Black. So I'm getting real-time reporting from the field in the form of my older brother Joel.
Well, thank you, Joel. And thank you for listening in. We really do appreciate that, Joel. Thank you so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll give you a wave. That's all the way from Canada here. Canada. Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, Paul, because you are an important person in this entire field. Whether you like to believe that or not, I tend to think that you are. 70 years since Roswell, we have been ridiculed. People who have had experiences have been threatened. They have been ostracized. And this isn't just by their fellow friends and family. This is by the government as well, and alleged government officials. My question to you is this. 70 years of denial, ridicule, everything that goes along. Why all of a sudden now is it important to be discussing UFOs?
I'm not sure what you mean. Important.
Okay.
For who?
The government. Why is it important to have a UAP task force? Why is it important now that we're talking about this in the mainstream media? Why now?
Well, that's a really good question.
This is one that's actually keeping me up at night. Why now? What has happened that all of a sudden right now we need to know that the military is taking very serious the claims that they've absolutely covered up for 70 years?
Well, okay, so part of this, I mentioned my friend Chris Mellon. He, as a matter of public record, that he helped sort of finesse the Navy into releasing those videos that they didn't really want to release. So I'm not sure it's so much that the government has had a change of heart. And again, the government is not one big actor, that they've had a change of heart, but that there's sort of more intelligent efforts, Freedom of Information Act and other efforts that have actually pried some pretty compelling information from their hands. And now they need to react and, verify or, respond to how accurate this information is and get it on the public record, whereas they didn't have to before. I'm not sure it's part of a long-term strategic editorial schedule for a disclosure process. It may just be there have been some, valiant individuals who succeeded in getting some of this information out of the hands of the military. Or, it could be, along the lines of what, Richard Dolan and Steve Bassett and others think, that they are sort of priming the pump and controlling the narrative before successive waves of greater and more compelling disclosure information come out.
Well, see, that's the whole purpose, though. This is what I don't understand. And maybe I'm thinking of this way too simplistically, or maybe I'm complicating things a little bit too much here. But, when I look deep at this, my mind goes crazy because as a journalist, I have questions. As an experiencer, I have a hell of a lot more questions. And as someone who has had some close encounters experiences like I have, and many of our listeners have, it always makes me wonder when the government speaks, there's usually a reason, rather than just Chris Mellon saying, hey guys, it's time to release these videos, and him having the pull and the trust and the faith to from the military to allow him to do that. I'm just wondering if it goes beyond that. Is there something coming that we should know about as a human species? Is there something that we haven't been told that we could be in imminent danger? Is there something happening that maybe it's a false flag? I really don't know. I don't want to go down the conspiratorial side of this, but it's got me scratching my head that it's not just about, well, right now is the right time to be doing this. We've covered it up long enough. The public isn't that stupid. The internet has a bunch of videos on it, because it just doesn't make sense to me.
There's very little about this phenomenon that does make sense. One way that I think one sort of framework that I think could help explain what's happening now is that there are many more eyes, electronic eyes in the world now, cameras, and ability to get information out, that it's digital now. So with that in mind, that sort of digital substrate to allow easier transmissions of information, that it could be as simple as that as to why information is coming out more easily now. Or people who've been involved for a long time got fed up and they want to release information. After 70 years or so since the birth of the modern ufology era, it may just be that it's been long enough, and so now we're getting more information out. I just don't know. You mentioned conspiracy. It seems hard to me to believe that this really is a coordinated, and maybe also with some rogue elements, but some kind of coordinated effort by the U.S. government, perhaps in concert with other governments, to get this information out, and that they finally decided to do that. We've got in the COVID relief bill in the United States, there's language tucked in there that says, oh, by the way, government has to release all their UFO information. I think by July, is the deadline.
June 25th. June 25th.
Okay, June 25th. And you talk to people who know about this, and they'll say, well, don't hold your breath, because the entities that have been holding on to this information would be the ones releasing it. And because there's a law that says they have to do that, do you think that automatically will make them release it all? So I don't know if we're going to get the smoking gun of the video of, Klaatu landing on the White House lawn in 1945.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that it's now. Like, it just came out of nowhere. And if you look at the study of it all, and I'm somebody who likes to watch patterns. Patterns just interest me. I'm an amateur pattern watcher, even though I can't sew. All right? And when I look at the pattern of everything, I see that we're only looking at, number one, the military side of everything. Number two, we're not talking about what happened in the past, even recent past, like the Phoenix Lights, where the military was scrambled and the Air Force was scrambled in the Phoenix area. We're talking about only the Navy and the Navy ships and their instances regarding this. And people who are new to ufology, thanks to the increase of social media presence and mainstream media coverage, proper mainstream media coverage, we're not hearing a lot of the history of this. Nobody has asked the questions, why did you cover it up for so long, and now all of a sudden it's a hot button topic that is getting millions of dollars of research money thrown at it in a public budget? This is where I get confused.
I wish I had the magic wand of clarity for you, my friend. To me, the whole thing is just confusing. Let's say that in large part, UFOs are of extraterrestrial origin. Okay, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just say that. Okay, first of all, how would they even know about us? My father liked to say that if you take the size of the known universe and map it onto the continental, let's say continental North America, to be more inclusive to our friends from the north and the south.
Thank you.
The Earth is perhaps a speck of dust in Alberta. Okay? So how would they even know? Yes, we've been beaming out episodes of I Love Lucy these many years, but the universe is just huge. So it's a non-trivial matter for them to locate us. Then, if they have the, in the words of my friend Ray Kurzweil, the post-singularity power to come here at great expense and perhaps a great amount of time, whether they are actually organic or synthetic or digital beings, why? Why would they come here? I don't think that they need our water, that they need our gold, that I don't know if they'd be worried about us having nuclear capabilities, or that they're interested in our non-Borg-like concept of individual love. I just don't see the exceptionalism in our species such that somebody 84 zillion light years away would decide to come here. And when they do, to have rather furtive encounters and leave. To me, that's the biggest conundrum about ufology insofar as the most popular extraterrestrial hypothesis is concerned. It just doesn't make sense to me. If they have another civilization, and I believe the universe is teeming with civilizations, has the power to come here, they have no need to come here. You and I could go get on a plane and fly to Honduras and take a bus 6 hours outside of Tegucigalpa and find a termite hill. And we could, investigate it. But we don't. I mean, first, how could we find that one? But why would we go there? Are they curious? Do they want us to join a galactic? Do we want them to join a galactic federation of human termite hybrids? I don't understand that. So for me, that's where I get caught up in this infinite loop of puzzlement as to the overall phenomenon. So the notions of why the government is doing this or that, I get stuck way before I get to that point. You're just on a much more advanced plane than I am. I'm like base level operating system.
I wouldn't say that. I am like the original MS-DOS compared to you being Windows 95.
Okay, at least I'm 95. Okay, thanks.
Hey, I'm generous that way. Paul Hynek is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You say that you are confused about this just as much as everyone else is. What's the scuttlebutt you are hearing as to why these things, whatever they are going on? What confuses you?
I'm not really confused about it. I don't think so much about, because maybe I come from a family that was rather frustrated by what the government did and why they did it. I don't really think so much about why is the government now doing this or that. I look at it and I talk to people and I find it very interesting that there is what seems to be a change in stance from at least part of the United States government. I find that, I don't want to say gratifying, I find that very interesting. I find that it's adding legitimacy to the field, and that's great. Personally, I'm most interested in finding out where these beings or when or how come here. And until I get a grip on that, I just keep, that's my infinite loop. That's where I just keep going back to.
But doesn't that open up, and I'm going to play your woo side here for a second, doesn't that open up a lot of strange questions that have been passed around ufology as laughter, but could potentially be true and need answering? Example, when you mention, how are they getting here? I think of Valiant Thor. That's what popped into my head, the story of Valiant Thor coming from Venus. Okay, right. Is that possible? Is that real? Or what about the theory and the story? Because we don't know if it's anything. It could be a fable about President Eisenhower meeting with extraterrestrials and trading humans for technology. I mean, it opens up the door to questions, as weird as they are, as fallible as they may be, like that. And there is no choice but to ask those questions that they may be real. We don't know if there's life on Mars. We don't know if there is life in our own solar system here. We assume that there isn't, but we really don't know. We can't see that far. We can only assume. So when you look at those weird woo-type questions, are they now, in what you were saying, valid to be asked?
Well, I don't know if I've ever heard an invalid question about UFOs. You know, it was my mother's milk, basically. Joel and my other siblings and I all grew up with it. So there were no questions, and like my father was very open, there were no questions that were taboo that we couldn't ask or areas that we shouldn't even broach. So to me, it's all been fair game since as far back as I can remember.
So did you ever ask your dad, or any of your family members ever ask your dad about Valiant Thor?
I don't remember. I don't know. Joel may weigh in. I don't remember talking about Valiant Thor in particular, no.
I mean, you're a friend of Craig Campobasso,
yep.
And you know he's got a book out on Doctor Strange's and Valiant Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, Craig is a diligent researcher, and he's a straight shooting guy. So, if he, and I haven't read that book, but if he puts out a book and puts his name behind it and researches it, I think there's something to it. Joel says he's never heard of Valiant Thor.
It's a good story.
So,
Craig Campobasso.
Yeah, fascinating, Valiant Thor. But, my father, on the one hand, as Jacques will say, my father wanted that one case that would just be, make everybody believe. But on the other hand, as a scientist, it wasn't so much about one case or one witness. It was the accumulated weight of the evidence that would really move the needle. Patterns in the data, which is why, he made the distinction. He realized he wasn't studying UFOs. He was studying UFO reports. And that's what helped him create, the Close Encounters classification system, because he wanted people to be able to add reports to the literature so that people could compare them and find patterns, because it's in that patterns and in multiple hundreds and thousands of cases that you can start to feel, the contours of a bona fide phenomena take shape.
Okay. And I can understand that and appreciate that. As we got about a minute to go here, I'm just confused because, what we're seeing today, it really opens up to a lot of these pending questions that the likelihood of us ever getting answers for are slim to none, and we're leaning more towards the none side.
Well, I think that information is hard to keep down. And whatever information is hidden in the Mechanic Center of Wright Pat or the Burn Center at Fort Hood of alien bodies or reverse engineered propulsion systems, it will come out. You can't contain this information forever. And whatever information is out there will be divulged at some point, whether it comes along and it fits the nice sort of increasing cadence of a pre-programmed UFO disclosure editorial schedule or not, I don't know.
All right. Well, let's leave it there for right now, as we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. The Heineck Legacy with Paul Hynek. We're talking UFOs. We're talking aliens. We're talking disclosure. We're talking his great wardrobe that he wears while on a radio interview. on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks to your brother Joel for listening. That's awesome.
Yeah. He has like I said, he's older, so he was around more during Project Blue Book, and had more sort of those military type experiences, and just saw like the earlier. Well, he was around later too, but he is more cognizant of those earlier days, and when my father wasn't, tilted that much to the side of the fence of, yes, there is a phenomena going on here. He saw sort of more of that sort of narrative arc take place.
Very cool. Very cool.
And he's an engineer. Like my sister is an artist and a nurse, and my three brothers are engineers, and I'm a friggin' French major. So my brother Joel and my other brothers, they're much more technical and scientific in how they view these things. If we're all presented with a case, we will look at it from different points of view. And I'm comfortable with science and technology, but on I won't say higher level, on a more abstract level, let's say. Whereas Joel will much more readily, hone in on propulsion and was there a noise and things like that to sort of establish the sort of technical bona fides of a case. Whereas I will more naturally look towards like the psychological factors of like, what's the makeup of the witness and what might their motivations be. And so sort of together, we have sort of both halves of what my father had combined in one person, I think.
Intriguing. Okay, the audience wants to know a couple of things here from you, Paul.
Okay.
Number one, what is your opinion of eating breakfast for dinner?
Well, I practice intermittent fasting, so I don't eat breakfast. So I think I'm probably not an authority on the subject.
Beautiful. So you're not eating like eggs and pancakes and hash browns for dinner?
No, typically not.
Thank you. That is a win for me because these people in the chat room, they're weirdos. They eat breakfast foods for dinner.
Yeah, the thing is, Dave, when we're talking about UFOs, unfortunately, we are going to get people talking about weird things when we're trying to keep it to a bread and butter topic like UFOs.
Exactly.
It's just a crying thing.
I understand that. You should see the comments coming in the chat room right now. Team breakfast for sure. It's terrible.
Sounds like someone's trying to shill a cryptocurrency coin.
It is, totally. Like, you get Irish Lincoln here. Bacon, eggs, and cheese for dinner is the bomb. No, that's a good breakfast meal, not dinner.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
And you're supposed to trust people like this. You know what I'm saying? Second question for you. How about this? Let's go to Devil's Tower and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Are you on Team Stump or Team Rock for Devil's Tower?
I think Hyneks have to be sort of impartial to that. We can't really have a faction. We sort of have to stand atwixt and in between these notions.
Okay, but on a personal, let's say on a personal Paul level, you're sitting in the bathtub, the bubbles are overflowing, and you're sitting there.
You're talking about the soap bubbles, right? Okay.
Soap bubbles, yes, soap bubbles.
Okay.
What are you thinking, Stump or Rock?
Wow. I know you're a professional journalist, but even you, Dave Scott, can come up with a less, and let me harken back to this notion of breakfast for dinner, a less ham-handed way to get me to answer a question that I just skillfully deflected.
I'm doing my best here.
So am I.
I'm going to put you on Team Stump because I think if you would have thought it was a sedimentary rock, you would have said so far.
You bet.
We're 2 for 2. 2 for 2, people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we ask it almost every guest. Almost every guest. Those questions. I mean, that's hardcore. That's hard-hitting journalism right there, my friend.
Yeah,
hard-hitting journalism.
We talked about this last time.
Mm-hmm. That's what I do. It's what I do. Hard-hitting journalism right there.
Yep.
My online troll is going to be happy about that. Hold on 1 second here. We got like 5 seconds before we come back here. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. My name is Dave Scott. Really appreciate earning your listening ears in the weird and strange, a lovely ditty we like to call the woo, here on Spaced Out Radio. I want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Paul Hynek. The Heineck legacy is what we are talking about tonight on the big show. Paul, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Mr. Scott.
Way back in the first half hour of this show, you made a comment that stuck with me. And yeah, it's hardcore, hard-hitting journalism here. And it is about extraterrestrials, aliens. All right? And you made an interesting comment that a few people lately have made on this show, namely Luis Elizondo, that we don't know what they are. We don't know if they're from inner Earth, outer Earth, out from space, time travelers from the future, time travelers from the past, other dimensions, other realms. What is your theory on what they are?
Well, let's use the scientific method and do at least a little bit of process elimination, and I'm going to rule out time travelers from the past. So now that we have that mission clarity, let's try to figure out where they come from. So my father, our father, including Joel, and Jacques Vallée and others, Jacques Vallée has a great quote to the effect that when the truth comes out, if the entire explanation of UFOs is extraterrestrial, I will be extremely disappointed. And he said that because it became clear to him and Jay Allen and others that there were aspects of the phenomena that went well beyond what seemed to be extraterrestrial provenance. It's a long way to go. You kind of got to tweak Einstein in the nose on the way here. We have very sensitive instruments to detect the entrance and exit of objects from our atmosphere, and we don't have corresponding reports of that. They exhibit a lot of comfort with our Earth gravity and atmosphere. So, and add those to how would they find us and why would they care, which are, to me, are the two biggest things that I keep getting stuck with. So they thought maybe the answer is even more exotic, perhaps, than nuts and bolts from other planets. Like you said, time travel or interdimensional. And the interdimensional one that Joel and I particularly like, it's something that my father called meta-terrestrial, because that answers some of the biggest pressing questions. How would they know about us? Well, that's because they're essentially here. They're right sort of next to us in a multiverse kind of way. Why would they care about us? Well, maybe they are us, or our cousins, our cosmic cousins. They're just right here. Our brothers from another galactic mother, let's say. Okay? And so that would explain a lot of things about also the commonality of reports that show that the crafts exhibit properties not known by our physics. That if there was a craft that came from another planet, we would expect to see a straight trajectory, but it has like what our father called a Cheshire cat aspect that would appear here, disappear, and appear there. So for me, the interdimensional hypothesis is one of the most compelling in terms of the provenance of where at least maybe part of the UFO phenomena comes from.
See, I'm not so much buying the future, and I'll tell you why. I don't understand the purpose of taking people against their will. All right? Anal probes, hybridization programs.
Whoa, you're going dark already.
Well,
okay.
I'm the leader of the woo, man. Leader of the woo.
Yeah, not touching that. Not touching that. Okay.
What, the leader of the woo?
Yep, I'm just going to back away gracefully.
Okay.
So, but I understand. I mean, I personally, I don't know if it's beings from the future. That does answer who they are, how they know about us, and why they might care. Because we're their great-great-grandfather. We're about to do something horrible, right? I understand all that. To me, it just seems like a really big conundrum. I remember when I was 10 years old, I watched the movie The Time Machine with my father. And after the movie, I said, Dad, I'm going to go down to the basement and build a time machine. And my dad started laughing at me. And David pissed me off. I said, what are you laughing at me for, Dad? Now, he had reason to laugh. And that is that, just because you watch a movie, The Time Machine, doesn't mean you can go downstairs and build a time machine. And of the 5 children he had, I am spectacularly the least likely to be able to do it. So there was good reason for him to laugh. And I said, Dad, why are you laughing at me? He goes, well, it's impossible. I said, but Dad, when you were a kid, wouldn't people have said that going to the moon was impossible? And he looks at me and he has this kind of patented, beard scratching. And he says, you know what, Bozo? And this is what he called, especially my younger brother Ross and I. You have 5 kids, you don't always remember their names. You know what, Bozo? You're right. You go downstairs and build that time machine because you don't know it's impossible. So you can do it. Like, wow. So thusly fortified with my dad's fresh confidence, I went down to the basement to build the time machine. And, I got some duct tape and some wire and, a coat hanger and some plywood. And I'm, pretty much well on my way. And then I had the realization that I had no working theory of how this thing would traverse time, much less the construction chops as to put something together. So I went outside and played kickball. But, the paradoxes in time travel are those are hard for me. So, I mentioned the process of elimination. That's how I wind up with the interdimensional hypothesis as the one I feel, let's say, the most comfortable with in explaining the most difficult riddles in the phenomena and being consistent with the evidence of something that is indeed meta-terrestrial.
So it's a combination then?
Oh, could be. I mean, it could be multivariate. There could be extraterrestrials. There could be a civilization underwater. There could be, the Venusians and the renegade Pleiadians. I mean, it could be a lot of things. And it could be manifestations from our collective unconscious. And that is, of course, for the small percentage of UFO cases that we think are actually legitimate, in addition to the hoaxes and the misidentifications of the planet Venus coming over the horizon, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so explain what you mean by the misrepresentation.
Well, I mean, I think the majority of UFO reports are things of, let's say, prosaic or pedestrian origin. It's the moon. It's a plane that looks a little bit different. Maybe it's being, there's refraction through some kind of odd clouds or something. But the majority of cases of UFO reports are not something that will stand up to scrutiny. And, and for my father, UFO, obviously the U means unidentified, but it doesn't mean unidentified by a casual observer. It means unidentified by someone who knows the field and can investigate it and get a good grip on it. That's when it becomes a UFO. But by far and away, 95% of cases, as you might expect, are fairly easily explained. But the problem is that there are so many cases that are reported that even if you have only 3 or 4% that stand up to that scrutiny, over the years, that's a lot of really good cases.
Okay, but what about if we stick to the extraterrestrial or metaterrestrial phenomena, as your dad liked to call it? That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
How do we define a lot of the sightings and the activity that is taking place? Look, there's always people. It doesn't matter whether it's me, anybody listening, or anybody who has had experiences. No matter what, we're never going to remember exactly what happened. We just won't. We'll remember snippets. We'll get those snippets very accurate, but we'll never remember the full thing as it happened. But when you have people who are waking up with different clothes on, or they're, we had a gentleman on this show named John, where he was 15 years old. He saw grays in his house, and when he woke up, he wasn't in his bedroom anymore. He was on his couch, and his shorts were on backwards. Right?
Wow.
Scenarios like that. I don't see, I don't see people, trying to figure out where I'm trying to go with this, because there's so much I want to say. I don't see a lot of people getting around trying to make that stuff up. Sure, there's the odd one, but I mean, for those who have experienced something that is very profound like that and had that experience, it's very real. And to say that, our future selves are abducting humans or animals, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, the word abduction is perhaps accurate, but let's say it is. Let's go with that for a minute. And that's, and Michael Masters makes a pretty good, interesting case for time travel. Let's say that it is us from the future. They may have a valid interest in interacting with us in a way where we're put to sleep or they extract some blood or something. They may have every reason to do that. So it could be in our best interest, not only in their research interest, but in our best interest for them to come here and do what they're doing. So, to your point about John and others, and I know you've had experiences, and I've met many people like you, and from what I hear, what you're saying about John and others, who there's just no reason to think that they are not sincere about their belief of this experience. And I find that compelling in and of itself. But so many of these experiences, to me, it's entirely possible that the trauma of encountering an entity that comes with overwhelmingly superior technology, or that communicates perhaps telepathically with you, or other things, it wouldn't take much for a person, an experiencer, to feel terrified in a situation like that and to interpret that as some hostile abduction. Think about a lion in a reserve in Africa that needs to get medicine because he has got a disease, and every now and then he's tranquilized. Imagine what he thinks of that, and yet it is in his interest. So the apparent reality that there are entities coming here and, let's say, interacting with us in a way where they either put us to sleep or subdue us could well be in our interest. I mean, I think if you see two dogs interacting in an alley, and you stop and think, are they playing or fighting? Well, they're playing. If two dogs are fighting, nobody ever says, are they fighting? It's obvious. If aliens were coming here, and let's say metaversal aliens were coming here, and they had truly hostile intent, by virtue of their overwhelming superiority over us, I think we would know. I don't think they would have to do skulk in the shadows in Kelly Hopkinsville and conduct secretive, hybrid, inbreeding. I think they would make their will known immediately because they could. So to me, that means that whatever visitations we have, at least are largely not hostile at all. They may be scary, traumatic, overwhelming, and they may be hostile in terms of one individual, but in terms of the collective actions of what they're doing, very hard for me to see there would be anything but supportive in some way.
Do you believe then that we are being visited at multiple times daily around this planet by these creatures, whatever they are?
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reports, a lot of good reports that stand up to scrutiny that suggest that it's a widespread, ongoing phenomenon.
You've talked to enough experiencers and heard enough stories. What's your personal view?
I mean, I'm more comfortable characterizing where the data leads us, in that there's a growing and already large body of solid evidence that points to an ongoing phenomena that's, if anything, heating up.
Do you think that these creatures, wherever they are, whatever they are from places that we can potentially get to? Are they on the moon? Are they on Mars, where we are now going?
Yes. I don't believe they're on the moon. I don't believe they're on Mars or on Venus. I don't believe they're on another planet. I believe I lean towards the interdimensional, and I think that these entities that stand the rigors of analysis of UFO cases are most likely, if from anywhere, from another dimension. That's my personal belief.
Even though the universe is infinite.
Yeah, I mean, the universe being infinite doesn't make extraterrestrial visitation more likely for the reasons I mentioned. Why it just doesn't seem to, align with the evidence. To me, interdimensional just fits the evidence much better. Now, that doesn't mean it rules out extraterrestrial. Again, it could be multivariate. There could be a lot of explanations, but for where the real answer is, I just like the interdimensional hypothesis.
That's a T-shirt. The interdimensional hypothesis. That's a nice book title, actually.
Let's get all meta-terrestrial up in here.
Well, I mean, I know there's certain people out there, selling Heineck shirts. Maybe we should get a meta-terrestrial shirt.
Yeah, now Joel's weighing in again. It's nice to have Joel here, saying that wormholes can be viewed as interdimensional. So that's kind of a marriage of conventional universe and space paradigm and dimensions.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Joel Hynek, for chiming on in there.
See, he's got that technical bent, that those technical scientific muscles that are just a little bit stronger than mine.
Probably has a nice mustache too.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
He does.
I can tell. Because that's power thinking right there. That can only come from a mustache. Just saying.
Okay.
Just
Sure.
saying. Just saying.
Sure.
All right. Well, if it is, as you say, from other dimensions that are this is coming from, because we got about 4.5 minutes here before we go to break at the top of the hour. do we have proof that they are coming from those other dimensions in people that you have talked to behind the scenes?
Proof? No, I wouldn't say proof. But, I'm really interested now. Joel made the bridge between dimensions and the universe. I like to make the bridge between psychedelics and aliens, because I think there is something to the growing body of reports of people who take DMT, which is the most powerful psychedelic drug, and the UFO phenomena. That's actually my strongest research interest.
Okay, we'll get into that when we come back from the break at the top of the hour. But just to finish off, if these beings have the ability to get here from other dimensions, that would mean that we do live in a multi-dimensional universe, and that's a whole different science off the bat there, is it not?
Yes.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, I don't know. If you're looking at UFOs, I don't know if there's much you can toss into it to make it all that much weirder. It's already pretty strange.
Is the public ready for that type of high strangeness? I'm not saying the people who listen to this type of show, but the mainstream public who's more worried about what kind of wine they're going to get for after work than potential aliens or interdimensional beings.
Yeah, I don't think public is ready for that. No. It's one thing to say UFOs, the government is saying UFOs are real and we have aliens coming from other planets. It's quite another thing to say, actually, they're coming from our backyard. And it's your, interdimensional doppelganger.
That only has 3 fingers and 1 thumb, 4 feet to 5 feet, big black gray eyes, a head that has no hair, a chin that you don't need to shave, and no body parts. That is one ugly future human.
Yeah, well, maybe they're saying the same thing about us with our gangly 5 fingers.
Look at this hair. You cannot, even the aliens cannot deny good hair.
Yeah, you're a nice hairy human. You're hirsute, Dave.
We can't even tell them apart, to be honest. We can't. Every gray looks the same. Well, depending on the species, of course. But, I mean, that is just a real heavy conversation that, you believe that it's more interdimensional than from outer space.
And I'm actually doing my own personal research voyages in that realm.
So in other words, we're going to get high together the next time you see us. We see each other.
If I haven't already spiked the coffee you're drinking there, yeah.
Well, you must have long arms then. Or a drone. One of them drones that's attacking the Navy ships right now.
I have a mole in the Dave Scott Media Empire operation.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I do. That's how we do.
Oh, that's very Austin Powers of you.
Yeah. Wait till you see your own mini-me running around. Then you'll know what I'm talking about.
Oh, goodness.
And by the way, Dave, your mini-me is a 3-fingered gray.
You have no idea how much sense that makes, That's what bugs me. That's what bugs me. You have no idea how much sense you just made. I think of Carl, the alien who showed up at my window on April 20th, 2015.
Well, it's nice that you're on a first name basis.
Well, I had to give him a name.
Yeah.
I just couldn't call him the alien.
Yeah, I watched the movie Paul for the first time a couple weeks ago. A nice, cherubic gray of an alien.
Exactly. Mr. Paul, I'm going to get you to hold on because we are at break time here. 2 hours down, 1 hour to go. We have Paul Hynek and the Heineck Legacy for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. DMT and Contact. Let's get high talking about this subject next on Spaced Out Radio. All right, I'm just going to run my dogs out. I'll be right back. Okay, boss?
Cool.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay. All right, Paul, I am back.
Okay.
All right. Well, this is going to be fun. We got about 2 minutes. You having fun yet?
Yes, sir. On the Dave Scott Express, how could I not have fun?
Holy cow, you're like really hot on the microphone right now. Plans for the weekend?
Farmer's market tomorrow. We got some UFO writing I got to do.
Nice.
And podcast from a 16-year-old new UFO podcaster guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Who wrote to Joel, but Joel is just crazy busy with film projects right now.
Well, good for you. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool. We got about 1 minute here. Or maybe 30 seconds. I don't even remember anymore. I think 1 minute. All right. I want to say a big thank you to Wagon Breath, Ninja, Sinister Shorts, Cat from Paranormal Heart, Cherry Pepsi Mike, Mr. Catfish, Ibarata for the amazing super chats tonight. Thank you so much for your love of this show and SOR, and I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's given us a thumbs up. Thank you to everyone who has hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. And let's get going here with the third hour.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
We're underway with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us on in. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. I want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Tango Receptor. Tango Receptor is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on for the next half hour with Paul Heineck. The Heineck legacy continues here on Spaced Out Radio. One of the subjects, Paul, that you are getting very fascinated with is the powers of contact and the usage of DMT. How does this work?
So I'll preface this by saying I was with a friend of mine, Nova Spivak, who has the distinction of having crash-landed tardigrades on the moon. So he has put life on the moon. So you asked about life on the moon? The answer is actually yes, because my friend Nova put it there. He asked me one day, he knew about my father, and he asked me where my father thought UFOs came from. And I said, well, metaterrestrial, interdimensional, yada, yada, yada. He said, you need to read a book called Alien Information Theory. And I said, Alien Information Theory is perhaps the sexiest title for a book I've ever heard in my life. And I asked him what it's about, and he said it's about DMT, the most interesting of the psychedelic drugs, because it's actually secreted by the pineal gland and it's coursing throughout the natural kingdom. It's a different class than other psychedelics. I said, wow, that's pretty cool. Later that day, I met with another guy who just he wanted me to help him do a documentary about his work. And among other things, he's a facilitator, a shaman with DMT. And he offered to facilitate me having a DMT experience. So I started reading about DMT, and I read a book called The Spirit Molecule. Of course, I read Alien Information Theory. And I started recognizing a body of reports that had echoes of the early days of the reports from UFOs. And I thought, okay, here's my father and Jacques Vallée and others thinking that there might be something to this interdimensional hypothesis. And now there's a growing body of reports that are fairly consistent in terms of what people report that they experience. Now, could it be because they're under the influence of the most powerful psychedelic drug known to man? Of course. But still, that's interesting enough. So I started taking DMT to see if I could have that kind of experience. And indeed I did. I had an experience where I felt like I was at the center of the universe, and these entities that weren't really incorporated into bodies, but it was mostly like a largely feminine Gaia-like presence all around me. And I asked, once I got my bearings, are you what we consider to be UFOs and aliens? And the answer I got back that rumbled through thousands of miles of synapses and neurons was, we can't explain in a way that you would understand. And I said, well, I understand no, so there's got to be some amount of yes there. And then, soon thereafter, my trip evaporated and I was back home, back on Earth, let's say. And for me, it was a tantalizing experience. And I was fascinated by that. And it was enough for me to want to do it more and to try to do it in as controlled a way as I could so that I could find out if there's something to that.
What's the feeling of being on it?
I don't know how to describe it. It's so overwhelming. It's nothing like any other experience I may have had on other psychedelic drugs that I may or may not have done. It's, when I felt that I was there, I thought I was home, that was the wellspring of the universe. And if I never left, I would be fine.
Okay. I don't even know what DMT is, to be blunt.
So it is, have you heard of ayahuasca?
Yes.
So it's basically the big brother of ayahuasca. It's the same substance. It's just ingested in a different way.
So basically, how long does the trip take to kick in?
Very short, about 12, 15 minutes.
How long does it last for?
That's the whole time. I mean, the whole experience is so short.
So how do you get recall of what's going on then?
Well, I think of it like this. There was so much happening that I could only perceive a small sliver of what was happening. Think of like being in a room with like 1,000 TV monitors. How much of that could you really take in? And then of that, I only remembered a tiny fraction of that. And that tiny fraction of what I remembered, of the tiny fraction of what I was able to perceive, was the most overwhelming experience I've ever had.
But how do you know it's not the hallucinogens and it's actual contact?
Of course I don't. But what I will say is, and that's why me being one witness is not all that compelling. But when you have this growing body of cases, it starts to become a little bit more interesting and a little bit more compelling, I think.
Ibarata in Singapore is asking, why do people see Thoth when they are on DMT?
What's Thoth?
Thoth. Thoth.
I've never heard of Thoth.
I don't know. Hold on. He's an Egyptian god of writing, magic, wisdom, and the moon. One of the most important gods in ancient Egypt. Said to be self-created or born of the seed of Horus.
And people see that when they smoke pot? I've never heard of that.
No, when they're on DMT. Ayahuasca.
Oh. Okay.
So you're missing out on that trip.
I've never met Mr. or Miss Thoth, so I don't know. I've seen Daniel Thoth, but I've never seen Thoth, an Egyptian god.
Well, there you go. There you go. So how many times have you tried this?
4 or 5.
Was each time different, or was it a continuation of the first experience?
That's one of the fascinating things, that each time I felt that I communed with the same intelligence and that they were looking out for me. It was a continuous experience.
So it was almost like translating into an extended version of what you were going on. They gave you a little bit more each time.
Yeah, and the second time I did it, I felt like they said, welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off, which was fascinating to me.
Are there side effects of this DMT stuff?
There could well be. I haven't noticed any. I mean, I have uncontrollable drooling, but I don't know if it's from that or not.
You got to prepare me for that.
No, I get that kind of dry humor that just comes at you.
I know that Grant Cameron, who's a friend of yours and mine, has been experimenting with psychedelics and the idea of connection, and he believes he is having some success with that. Now, my opinion, and I could be wrong because I've never done it, and I'm not going to sound like somebody who says that you shouldn't do it or shouldn't try it. I mean, to each their own, really. But my opinion of it is, wouldn't that tap into the imagination of what you want to see?
It's a really good point. And you have to be very careful of believing things that you want to be true. And I'll freely admit, I want this DMT thing to prove an answer to UFOs. So could I just be seeing what I want to see? Absolutely. But it's still compelling enough for me to want to try. In the light of that, I don't want to do drugs because I prefer clarity in my mind. But this one is just so different.
Do you know if there are any scientific studies going on between DMT and metaterrestrial contact?
I don't know. I mean, I think the UFO field is already weird enough. You add DMT, and you're not going to have a lot of serious scientific researchers left at the table. That's my feeling.
Yet more people are doing that, and ayahuasca at every time.
But I think most people who are doing DMT and ayahuasca are not doing it for anything related to interest in UFOs. I think it's more personal journeys or recreation or whatever else. But I don't know if I know there are some people because that's a community I'm active in. But I'd like to think, and I will do more in this, and I hope to make more of a bridge between these two, fascinating areas.
Okay, Bombshell Bomber, who lives somewhere in eastern Canada, she is asking, the tardigrades being released onto the moon was allegedly a mistake. Are you saying, Paul, that your friend actually did this on purpose?
Well, here's what I'll say. It's a matter of public record that there's an Israeli rocket that crash landed on the moon. Part of the manifest, let's say the passenger manifest on that ship, were tardigrades. It was not my friend's intent to crash land life on the moon. And actually what he was doing was doing an encyclopedia of sorts on a fascinating, he's making a backup of humanity's knowledge in a way that's indestructible. And as an afterthought, he put tardigrades on there as well. And then the rocket crashed on the moon. So there may now be rocket crash survivors on the moon.
Well, tardigrades are pretty indestructible.
They are. They can live in a volcano. They can live in space. They can live in water.
Ugly little creatures, too.
Water bears.
They look like they need to go on a diet. They look like a vacuum bag, to be honest. With legs. You're like, yeah, I'm not answering that. I'm not answering that. All right, I know when I have to move on because Paul goes silent and says, Dave, enough of that Canadian humor. But in regards to contact, do you think that you need the DMT in order to initiate further contact where you wouldn't need the DMT?
Well, there are a lot of people who feel that they don't need to resort, I think they would feel, to DMT to have an experience like this. I haven't had any experiences that I would consider to be alien in nature without DMT. It seems to be my conduit to that. And it's something I want to be sparing about because it's a very powerful substance, but that's what it seems to make sense for me.
Do you plan on continuing your own experimentation?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Do you do it in a controlled setting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm very careful about that.
So take us through that, if you don't mind.
So, well, there's somebody, each time I've done it, there's somebody who's very experienced, who's sort of a facilitator, who sort of invokes the spirit of the plant medicine and is there to watch after me.
So how do they break you out if you have a bad trip?
Haven't yet had one.
What would you think, and this is hypothetical right now, if these interactions through DMT all of a sudden opened a gateway that you were now dealing with them on a physical level?
Part of that terrifies me and part of that just delights me. My sister once said, "Hey, Paul, if a flying saucer lands, please don't get on it." I would get on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you would too. And I want to create these experiences. I want to see if I can find a bridge, if it is interdimensional, or rule it out. There's enough interest in there to invoke the inner scientist in me to be adventurous and try to make something happen. Absolutely.
Is there any hangover on that?
No, not at all.
I'm just tripped out by this.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Do you believe then that we can open up more physical experiences through this in what you've studied on it?
Yeah, I believe that DMT is a unique substance that you can't, just like the UFO phenomenon, I don't think you can completely dismiss it as the influence of a psychedelic drug in a chemical reaction on the brain. There just seems to be more to it than that.
What would you do if all of a sudden a UFO landed in front of you, in your backyard, and said, "Paul, it's time to go for a ride"?
I'd take out some Guinness from my fridge and go for a ride.
Well, I realize that. Would you be worried about when you would be coming back, if they would allow you the clarity and the memory to actually remember it?
I would be no. I would be compelled to get on there.
What would you hope to do?
Oh man, get answers. Where are you from? Are you from another dimension, another planet? Are there others? I would be, as my brother Joel once said when I was a little kid, I was annoying because I would ask questions all the time. And that's what I would do. I would say, look, my dad worked his ass off to understand about things, and I need to get some answers from you, mister. That's what I would say.
Would you shake your finger at them too?
No, I don't think I'd be in a position to shake fingers at somebody who came from another planet or dimension.
So in other words, you want to fly the ship.
Oh, hell yeah.
I got to meet a couple of years ago a 12-year-old girl who was telling me about flying the ship.
Really?
Yeah. And I asked her how she did it, and she basically said that she didn't know. It just went wherever she thought.
Where did she go?
Well, she was nervous talking to me about it because she thought I was going to make fun of her. And her mom had actually approached me because she knew I was into this stuff and said, do you mind having a conversation with my daughter because she's a little bit scared to talk to people because she doesn't want people thinking that she's weird. And so I basically told her that I believe her. And she just, as any typical kid who's pretty nervous and talking about something like that, she really didn't get specific. She just went, I don't know. She goes, it only happened once and I was able to go wherever I wanted to go. I said, did you go up in the stars? She goes, yeah. I said, did you see anything? She goes, well, it was dark. And then she didn't mention anywhere she went on Earth, whether Egypt or Australia or the North Pole or wherever. But you could tell just by her body language that she felt quite relieved that someone was actually believing her.
Well, you've got that innate sense of compassion, Dave, and you can relate to that. That's something that we learned from my father. And that's something that's such a traumatic experience that you can sit there and make that person feel comfortable telling you about that. And you can actually relate to aspects of it.
It's amazing. Yeah, but anybody can. It's the amazing power of saying, I believe you. It's not that hard.
And, and that's, just think about experiencers. It's the most traumatic experience of their life. And just to have somebody say, you know what, I believe you. You can tell me about this. And I've either had my own experience or I've talked to others that have had experience like this.
So for those who you have talked to who have had that type of experience, what have you gotten out of it? What have you learned?
It's a really good question.
We only got about 1 minute here.
Sort of weave that tapestry together to have conclusions I draw from it. I just get more and more interested in it all the time.
Mr. Paul, we are right near the end of the Tonight Show, and I want to say thank you so much for coming on again. It's been way too long since we've had you on, and I will take fault for that, but I want to say a big thank you for being a friend of mine, being a friend of this show, and doing what you do in the UFO community, man.
My pleasure, Dave. Anytime. And I really enjoyed being on the panel with you again also.
Yeah, that's fun. UFO Con.
Even though you did lie the whole time.
You were lying the entire time. You know what? Last time I had people believing me. This time, not a single one. Not even on my own story about the haunted pop cans.
Yeah, I got one. I wasn't much ahead of you.
It's a damn Robert Perala. That's what it is.
I know.
Damn Robert Perala. Paul Hynek, everyone, on Spaced Out Radio. What a treat to have him here. The son of J. Allen Hynek. Legendary family in the UFO field. Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. One of our listeners who's in the chat room, Kilbasa Nova, she was actually at UFO Con, and her name was drawn for the Liar Liar. And she thought your story was pretty good on that panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She didn't believe me because, why would she believe some hack from Canada? You know what I'm saying? But anyways, my friend, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Dave.
You take care, okay?
It was a lot of fun. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Great guy. Great guy. And seriously, funny. Jennifer Richardson Elizalde, I am reading your comments right now. You need a hug. You need a hug, young lady. I know what you're going through. And remember that you have friends here. You have friends here that can help with that. There's always somebody here to talk to if you're going through a tough time. It's the beauty of our chat room. Anxiety, depression, always somebody to talk to. Always. That's a personal note because you're loved here. Yes, you are. Mr. Catfish, thank you for everything that you've done tonight. It's kind of a wow. Appreciate all the super chats. This long list of super chats from you. I appreciate that. Wow. Ibarata, thank you for your super chat. Cherry Pepsi, Mike, Cat from Paranormal Heart, Sinister Shorts, Ninja, and Wagon Breath. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Wow. Thank you. Let you in on a little Bigfoot secret here that I recently learned. That every time Duke goes in the forest, he wears a cape that has a big SD on it for Super Duke. Yes, Duke investigates Sasquatch with a cape on. 6 Hour, how you doing, man? Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that. That is not fake news about Duke, everyone. That is very true. Very true. See, look at it. He says, I need to quit wearing that. The Sasquatch spot it and go hide from me. No problem, Danny. I just got your message. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. We have just about a minute or so left. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate that. You hung out with Duke. Didn't mean you go in deep into the forest looking for Bigfoot with him. He does carry a battle axe into the forest, too. Sig Sauer, thank you so much, man, for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we got 25 seconds here before we're going to launch the SOR Newswire. I'm having fun tonight. I hope you guys are as well. And here we go. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing, shall we? The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the paranormal. Yes, the paranormal. Kristen Lee owns a rental property in Bellaire, Ohio, a sleepy 4,000-person town that rests gently, just gently, against the banks of the Ohio River. For several months last year, the state's coronavirus-related restrictions meant that she had to temporarily close the century-old Bellaire house. When Ohio revised its stay-at-home order in early May, she was given the green light to reopen. Lee added that a set of COVID-19 guidelines to the historic home's already lengthy list of rules and regulations for the guests. Overnight visitors are now asked to bring their own bedding and towels. They also have to agree to the property's previous requirements that prohibit the usage of Ouija boards during the stay or carrying any haunted objects into the house. Absolutely no rituals of any kind. No opening or closing portals. No exceptions. Oh yeah, Lee's Bellaire house has been called one of the top 10 most haunted houses in the United States, a distinction it shares with the Amityville Horror House and the rambling Massachusetts property where Lizzie Borden allegedly axed her father and stepmother to death. Lee said that she and her son lived in the house until the spirits, which include the ghost of a 19th century business magnate, Jacob Hetherington, and a malevolent entity that pretends to be a little girl named Emily. How weird, because the haunting at my museum here has a little girl named Emily as well. That's kind of chilling. Literally scared them out to the other side of town. Shortly after moving out, she decided to open the home to ghost hunters, to visitors who aren't freaked out by the seance pics in its Airbnb listing, and to serious afterlife researchers. Apparently, there are 11 portals in the house where spirits can port back and forth, and they do sit on a ley line, which is a hot spot for paranormal activity, Lee said. A lot of people have reported seeing full-fledged apparitions, and some said that they've become physically ill because of the energy overload. Weird. Deja vu right now. Some of the spirits here aren't as welcoming as others. People have been scratched, pushed, and they've had doors closed on them. In addition to being a psychic medium, Lee is also a paranormal investigator, which isn't as uncommon as a profession as you think. Right on. Moving on. On May 1st, 2020, a classified briefing was generated about the UAP presence via the Oval Office, the Office of Naval Intelligence, otherwise known as the ONI, Those familiar within the briefing articulated that the goal was to destigmatize the UAP problem and to promote more intelligence collection regarding UAP incursions and encounters with active military deployments. The UAP briefing was a build-on to a previous O&I briefing generated October 18, 2019. Both were distributed across a wide range of intelligence network platforms. Yes, this is pretty good here, because this leads up to this new video that was released by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, mainly Corbell. And Corbell says, as an investigative filmmaker and journalist working in the field of UFO research, I have anonymous communications and data drops on a daily basis. It's something I asked for publicly long ago. I provided my contact information and prompted people to reach out with cases and leads regarding the UFO phenomena. I repeated this request on radio, television, and popular podcasts. The tactic worked really, really well, he says. Over the years, the influx of data coming his way has grown to become almost unmanageable. He now receives no less than 900 actionable communications a month, often with large attachments of audio, photos, and video. Jeremy says, I do my best to review and sort these leads into priority categories. Top priority given to the best physical evidence with the highest possible or possibility of being corroborated by multiple reliable witnesses. Military reports typically take top position in sorting his hierarchy due to the extensive and quality documentation often mandatorily performed due to the bureaucracy inherent within government operations. Verifying the authenticity of obtained materials is the next step. This usually provides to be an exhaustive length process. Jeremy utilizes a trusted network that he has built over the years when vetting potential sensitive information, including investigative journalist George Knapp, who is always his first call, and he has navigated these murky waters for decades prior to Jeremy's own efforts. By combining forces, they have been capable of tapping contacts within almost any industry, including military and intelligence. Very cool. Very, very cool. Here's a weird one. A woman was left mortified after she got her passport photos back, only to find that they had been edited, leaving her with a very dodgy Barnett. What the heck is a Barnett? All right, TikTok user Katie Fiore managed to see the funny side of the mishap and posted a clip in which she explained, wore a bun to get my passport pictures, but they said it was too big. They had to cut it off. Not ideal. In the clip, we could see Katie with her hair piled in a bun on top of her head before she moves to reveal the interesting edit that had been made in her photo. Writing, this made me cry. Passport photos are the worst. Another wrote, this will never be iconic. A third wrote, I'm sorry about how hard I laughed at this. Someone else asked, why didn't they just ask you to take your hair down? Katie told her followers she had no clue that they would edit photos and didn't know she had been given a trim until the snapshots were printed out and handed over to her. But all's well that ends well, and Katie confirmed that after seeing what they had done to her hair, she requested another photo. Well, Katie was fortunate enough to spend and spot the mix-up and get herself a new set of photos done. Woman from California wasn't so lucky. We told you this story about Leslie Pilgrim, who went to the DMV in Laguna Hills, California, forgot to remove her face mask while having a new photo taken for her driver's license. It appears the person who was taking the photo didn't realize that she had a mask on either and printed out her new driver's license with a mask on, so you really cannot see her identity. Yes, law student Leslie said, I thought this was a joke. This is my life. At first, I just was kind of stared at it. It took some time to process. Then I started thinking, oh my gosh, as a law student, this can't be legal. If I give this to police officers, they're going to think that it's a fake and I'm going to get in trouble. Started thinking about all the legal ramifications. Thankfully, the DMV admitted their mistake and that she will be entitled to a brand new license free of charge. Here in British Columbia, hundreds of activists are digging in and at a logging road and blockading across a swath of southern Vancouver Island, vowing to stay as long as it takes to pressure the provincial government to immediately halt cutting of what they say is the last 3% of giant old growth trees left in the province. The situation echoes the 1993 war in the woods in nearby Clayoquot Sound, which nearly saw 1,000 people arrested at similar logging blockades in the largest civil act of disobedience in Canadian history. Tensions are rising. Just this weekend, the activists stopped a team of old-growth tree cutters called fallers from entering a logging area in the KQ's watershed. "You know this is illegal," said Trevor Simpson, a logger who told The Guardian that he has been a faller contractor for over 29 years and relies on cutting old-growth trees. "This is my livelihood at stake." A blockader named Owen, one of about 24 on the scene, told the loggers through the window of their pickup, "The fact is, if we want our planet to be sustainable, we have to protect these ecosystems." Another logger, "We have to work. Are they, the blockaders, going to pay our wages today? If we don't work, we don't get paid." The blockaders refused to let the Simpsons team pass, and eventually, frustrated crew, they all left. They returned on Tuesday to hand-deliver a court injunction ordering the blockades taken down and setting the stage for arrest. Similar scenes are playing out at strategic blockades across the area. After the loggers left the KQ's blockade, activists went to work building fortifications, a giant kitchen tent, and even an outhouse made entirely of discarded old-growth cedar. The movement started more than 8 months ago when an impromptu blockade of 12 people sprang up to stop road building into the headwaters of the Fairy Creek watershed, one of the last untouched watersheds in the region. But what started as a campaign to stop logging in a single watershed has grown thanks to widespread frustration with the British Columbia government's broader approach to old-growth logging. Activists and forestry experts expect a tiny fraction of the province's giant old-growth trees are going to be left standing, and an immediate moratorium on cutting them is needed. Meanwhile, forestry companies and the government say that the cut must continue in order to protect jobs in an industry that has experienced steep job losses and mill closures in recent years. The logging company Teal Jones Group said its plans for cutting in Fairy Creek have been mischaracterized, and the trees it wants to cut are critical for supporting hundreds of jobs. Most of Fairy Creek is protected forest reserve or unstable terrain and not available for harvesting, said Jerry Kotsky, the company's vice president. Oh, yes. I don't know where I feel on this one. That's a catch-22. I mean, the old growth is nice. It's got to be protected. But, I don't know. Jobs, too. Anyways, local media outlets in Las Vegas were invited for a sneak peek of Elon Musk's new form of public transit. But just how futuristic is this technology, which Musk's Boring Company has dubbed the Loop? That depends on how futuristic you think a car being driven slowly by a human inside a tunnel might be. The $52 million Las Vegas Loop, a tunnel sitting 40 feet underground, is about 1.5 miles long and has 3 stops around the Las Vegas Convention Center, Central Station, which is underground, as well as a West Station and South Station, which are both above ground. Mick Akers, a reporter with the Review-Journal, tweeted a handful of photos showing the Boring Company's Las Vegas transportation system in action, and it looks pretty underwhelming to say the least. The videos that were released show a Tesla car being driven by a human driver, and it has a top speed of just 35 miles per hour in the tunnel. And while yesterday's media preview was supposed to be a special look for Las Vegas media outlets exclusively, it sounds like reporters on the ground didn't get much new information at all. Now we've gotten to see a lot on this tour. Heck, I'm in a Tesla right now going through it, reporter James Schaefer said, trying to sound like this tour had been worth its time, but there are some details that we're not sure of, that we're still finding out more about, like the loading and waiting procedure times, about how the 16 passenger vehicles that will be coming through these tunnels. Until then, we're just going to have to go along for the ride, as everyone else said. Whatever happened to those 16 passenger vehicles? Road crews in Pennsylvania were left dealing with a sticky situation when 2 tractor trailers collided under a highway overpass, causing one to spill a truckload of syrup. Reports indicate one of the trucks jackknifed around 1 p.m. Thursday on Interstate 476 in West Conshohocken, and collided with another truck underneath the overpass near Mittensford Road. Yeah, the tractor-trailer carrying a load of syrup ended up on its side, spilling the sticky substance onto the roadway. Crews were summoned to the scene to clean up the mess. No word if the bees took over and got it all done. The bees are usually really good for that kind of stuff. They really are. A Boston woman, taking her son's dog for a walk, tried to take a shortcut to the beach, ended up needing to be rescued when she literally was like in quicksand-type mud. Yeah, she sank into the deep mud. Camille Coelho said she was taking her son's dog, Lucy, to walk on Constitution Beach in East Boston to find sea glass for her jewelry business, which she decided to take a shortcut through what appeared to be gravel, but it turned out to be mud. I've never walked these flats. I don't plan on walking the flats again, she said. It looked like it was gravel. I was not trying to cut through the gravel to get to the beach, and it was not gravel. Coelho said that she ended up more than knee-deep in the mud. It's a great metaphor for the year, she said. I can't believe it. I stepped in mud, and pretty soon it was up to my knees, and I was stuck. Witnesses summoned firefighters to the scene, and they put a ladder down on long boards to reach Coelho and Lucy, who did not sink but remained dutifully by Coelho's side. Coelho was not injured, and she said she was able to find some sea glass after being rescued. Well, that's what's important. Totally important. In Pittsburgh, police say a large snake photographed slithering through a tree in a public park is believed to be a non-venomous species. Pittsburgh Public Safety said that the snake had been photographed in a tree by a member of the public along a trail in Frick Park. Now, animal control officers and Pittsburgh Park Rangers were summoned to the park to search for the serpent, but they couldn't find it. The city said later a couple of experts at the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium reviewed the photo of the reptile. They believe it to be a black rat snake, a non-venomous species that is native to Pennsylvania, but is not often seen in the Frick Park area. Either way, this thing is about 12 feet long, 14 feet long, probably could eat a human or an animal. And finally, who says you have to retire? A 90-year-old Japanese woman who has worked for the same company since 1956 has earned a Guinness World Record. Why? Well, she's the world's oldest office manager. Yasuko Tamaki, who will celebrate her 91st birthday on May 15th, still works 5 days a week at Sunco Industries for 7.5 hours a day. All I did was doing what I'm expected to do for 90 years, so I don't know what to say. I am truly touched by the award. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we put out a question on Facebook and Twitter, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. If J. Allen Hynek were alive today, what do you think he would think of ufology? Well, 13 Ballads says, seems his important contributions dealt with astronomy. UFOs are giggle factory stuff compared to what one can do with a telescope pointed into space. Good points. Solid points there. Davey, I think he would be pleasantly surprised to see his close encounters classification still in use every day. Ray, despite every effort I made to obfuscate the truth, for 22 years, it's finally leaking out. Adriano, he would say, you better believe it. Adam, probably be like, oh, this is cool. Jeremy, he'd still be the powerhouse researcher searching for the truths about the cases since his death. I think more light would be shined on the cases that couldn't be explained while he was in Project Blue Book. Chris, depends on if he divulges whether he was lying when he worked for the government on Project Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, or later in life when he contradicted and opposed his earlier position. The fact that this guy is placed upon a UAP pedestal is an insult. His job in the 1950s was to debunk every UAV report given to him. That was the sole purpose and objective, and he did so with gusto. His altered findings resulted in many good men losing their positions as pilots and air traffic controllers and alike, but he did his job and was able to disprove every UFO sighting through manipulated junk science and theater. I'm thinking Chris is not a fan. I'm just getting that feeling. I don't know. Maybe I'm far-reaching. I just don't think Chris is a fan of J. Allen Hynek. Brendan, he would still be the government's yes man. Alex, disappointed, a little embarrassed perhaps in how little progress we've made and how there isn't a professional system of experts. Embarrassed at all of that made-up deep state conspiracy stupidity that attached itself to this field, and certainly embarrassed at all the hoaxes we see on sites and how we've embraced hoaxes and all of that. If he isn't, then he was absolutely a government plant. Jamie, he and others like him should be tried by we the people of the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America for the high crimes of knowing and committing treason for profit and gain. I believe that's what he'd be thinking also. David, I think he would ignore all exhibitionists and concentrate on the real task at hand. Joseph, Heineck would call it the ufology bread and circus rockstar roadshow. I'm no longer impressed. Russell, he would think, my God, the folks who have realized flying saucers are real are all trying to make a living with that knowledge. Knowing something about reality shouldn't make someone a TV star. They've turned ufology into a tabloid circus. It's like an old woman's gossip circle. It's even turned into a religion in some circles. Dr. Barry Taff, he'd be very perturbed and upset watching how dysfunctional much of ufology has become, where it's turned into various groups of self-serving nut jobs trying to discredit everything and everyone they don't agree with. It's very much like a poorly written soap opera. Gale, he would observe way too many knuckleheads chasing their tails, all showmanship and no core productivity. I think by and large, these know-it-alls deserve a TV show because television is a wasteland and they could fit right in. Quality results are not measured by arrogance, nor reliable evidence produced out of criticism and debunking others' hard work. Hynek would ask where the professionalism was. Nikki gets the final word tonight. He might be fed up with this BS, then again, could always ask him on the other side, but then again, maybe not. Thank you for everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. We'll do it all again very, very soon. Thank you to Captain Shirk for a wonderful SOR Newswire that she prepared for us. And, of course, a big thank you to Paul Hynek, coming on the show talking about the Hynek legacy. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you so much to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club on our website, and all the Starkers and Snarkheads at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Come ride the Rule Train with us. We absolutely love it when you do. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Have a great night.